access online that can toxify, even endanger them. Because the government has today told the regulator, Ofcom, to be more proactive, to make sure that the tech companies are building safety measures into their systems. And they say that a social media ban, a blanket ban for under 16s, could now be on the table.
Yeah, if they don't do what they're instructed to. The new legislation will place the duty on tech companies for the very first time, offering some hope for parents who say social media caused their children harm. Well, Ellen Room's son, Jules Sweeney, was found dead when he was 14 back in 2022. Ian Russell's daughter, Molly, took her own life in 2017. She was also 14. Both of them exposed to harmful social media content. Ellen and Ian join us now. Thank you for being with us. You're both powerful voices in this campaign. And Ellen, you have been able to raise your voice with the minister in charge, the technology secretary, Peter Kyle. You met him on Monday, didn't you? Yeah. You feel that actually this is an individual, a minister, who actually understands what you're talking about and is actually going to do some good. Tell us what you want him to enact.
Well, this was the second time we actually met him, and he certainly gives the impression he's very driven, very determined to make changes. And it was really reassuring to hear that actually he really takes on board this is a serious matter.
In the case of your lovely son, Jules, just 14 years old, and he takes his own life, and you believe it's because of the stuff he was seeing online. You have tried over and over again to get the social media companies to reveal what Jules saw online before he took his own life. Yeah. How far have you got with having a look at that material?
So I don't know it was social media, and I've always been very careful. There was nothing offline that gave or has any. It wasn't bullied offline. There was no reason why he should end his life that we can see offline. So the only thing we haven't looked is online. The social media companies, TikTok haven't released anything. Instagram have released some, but they won't release messages. So was he being bullied? Was he doing some sort of challenge? And I've always said I just want to know what he was doing.
You have every right to know, as his mother.
I don't have the right. That's the problem. As his parent.
Morally.
Yeah, but...
We spoke in May, and you were hoping for some movement then. Here we are now. Any change at all in their resolute refusal to give you the information you need?
No. I've had some data released from Instagram. They won't release his messages, even because it would have other children's data or names. And I said, well, they could redact that. They won't release that. They won't release anything else without a court order. So my next step is I have to apply to the Attorney General to redo my son's inquest, and then it has to go to the High Court to grant that, which means it costs, my solicitors quoted £86,000 to get my son's...
You?
Yeah.
You'd have to pay that?
Yes.
That's outrageous.
To get my child's data, to see if there's some answer as to why he ended his life. And I think that's really wrong.
When you spoke to the Technology Secretary, and as you say, you've met him twice now, is he prepared to address this particular issue about parents in these tragic circumstances having that kind of encoded right to see the material that may have led to their child's death?
That wasn't part of the conversation we had, but it was particularly around the Ofcom and the statement they've released today for our meeting on Monday. I did raise a petition. We got 126,000 signatures, and I'm waiting to hear if that will be heard in Parliament.
Can I just ask you, when you are negotiating with the... Oh, I'm so sorry.
Richard.
Do come in. Yes, please do.
Just to say that the Online Safety Act, as drafted, has improved that situation.
Yes,
because
correct.
these stories, Molly died in well, it's 7 years. 7 years ago, about this time, in fact, Molly woke up for the last time because tomorrow is the 7th anniversary of her death. So these stories have been going on for far too long. And one of the provisions in the Online Safety Act is that data is accessible to coroners. Section 101, we've got to know it as. That's changing so that cases like Ellen's, these awful cases, or cases like Molly's, it took 5 years to get her inquest to happen simply because of the delays involved, will be much easier to get the data for. That's a good change.
Which is good for parents now that lose children. In my case, I can use that law by going back to the High Court and having his inquest redone.
But as a cost of £86,000 to you, which seems absolutely shocking.
What I was just quickly going to ask you was, when you talk to these companies and they say, no, we can't release information, you have to get a court order, etc., are they saying that from the position of, we'd like to, but we can't because of the law, or are they being defensive? Are they ring-fencing their position?
I think there are some companies, without naming individual ones, that don't seem to care at all. And there are others that saying without a court order we can't release certain parts of it. Well, I don't really understand why not. If they're a company, if they wanted to help me, they could. They're choosing not to, in my opinion.
Ian, as you say, the Online Safety Act has already changed that. So there will be better access. But that's talking about after the event of losing your child. What we want is for no one to lose their child because of something they've seen on social media. So what hope do you take from what the government is saying to Ofcom that might prevent any of this material being available at all?
So this is a really welcome step. I've learned that whether you're talking to politicians or whether you're talking to platforms, it's not the words that they use that are important. What you have to judge them by is the actions and the outcomes. Yes. So that's what we're all asking for. The current Secretary of State didn't need to issue this statement of strategic priorities, but has chosen to. That's a really encouraging thing. It's a sign that most of us that are involved with this think that Ofcom as a regulator could be doing more.
And that's what the Technology Secretary is saying.
He's basically saying you should be more focused. Now, Ofcom, again, meeting the people in Ofcom, they all seem very committed to making the world safer. Regulators don't have the best track record. And, you know, Ofcom are one of the better regulators. There are regulators that seem to be responsible for sectors where they're effluent in our rivers and companies that are making huge profits, and that seems to be bad. Ofcom aren't in that camp. So what the Secretary of State is saying is do better. But this is the beginning of a very long journey because for Ofcom to do what they can within the current structure of the Act is one thing. What we also need is the government to be looking at where the Act is weak, so that where it needs to be strengthened so that we all get the results that we want, will be.
Can I ask about a ban? Because in Australia, banning under-16s from access to social media. And the government seems to not have ruled that out, but raising that as a possibility. Would you welcome a ban? Would that
my understanding is Peter Carr didn't say that they would ban under-16s. They've said that they wouldn't rule anything out.
That's right.
So that is obviously an option. There's two different camps as to whether you ban it or not, and we were discussing this earlier. And your take on it is, what you said earlier was quite relevant, really.
I think the Online Safety Act has that Ofcom would have the power to close a platform down. So if there's a platform that remains unsafe, under the Online Safety Act, you could close an individual platform down. So ultimately, there's a sort of ban there already. If you want to introduce new legislation to bring about a ban, we've seen how long it's taken to get the Online Safety Act to where it is. It's just about to start working. Don't stop the process. Don't put it back to square one. Don't delay it any longer. It would take 3 years or something to get a ban in. Carry on with the Online Safety Act. Carry on with regulation. And it's much more proportional. It's much more evidence-based, and you can still control the harmful content.
Can I ask you both then, and I'm speaking for all parents watching this, how would a blanket social media ban on under-16s actually work? How would you enforce it?
I think that's one of the questions, isn't it?
Well, and also, who is under 16? Because a lot of these children are putting in fake ages. And so they've got to work out who is under 16, first of all, and then how do they ban it? How do they switch it off? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what happens with Australia.
Yeah. And also, Ian, you're worried, aren't you, that if you are banned from seeing any of this material online, there would be a point where you're 16 where you would suddenly be flooded with it because you'd be able to switch it on. And maybe you needed to acclimatise to some of the stuff that's on social media.
You need to acclimatise in a safer environment. I'm not saying where we are is right, and the Online Safety Act will allow platforms the opportunity to make their platform safer. Now, why they haven't done it before, I don't know. But we already are seeing, as we're approaching the introduction of Ofcom's codes of practice and the Online Safety Act taking effect, we're already seeing Instagram introducing teen accounts
Yes.
and allowing you, I read yesterday, allowing you to reset your feed if you don't like the way that the algorithms are suggesting you content. We're already seeing Roblox taking steps. Now, whether these are big enough steps is debatable, and the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, but at least there's movement and action, and this will only continue.
And Ellen, just briefly now, I mean, obviously Jules is no longer with us, but you still have this absolute right. I think everybody would agree to see what he was looking at. Were he still with us and you were worried about him and what he was looking at, you would expect the right as for a parent to access that material to be absolute. So it would be something you could look at in the there and then. Yep.
I think so. I think that I hadn't really thought about it when I started campaigning around this. What if the parents are the perpetrators? It hadn't crossed my mind. And I think there is a protection thing that somehow we have to protect the children as well, that the parents may be risky towards them. And I don't know how you solve that issue.
What do you mean by that?
So I always said that a parent should have the right to see their children's data. So from my point of view, I thought, well, actually, we'd look at his phone and see and go, oh, gosh, well, why are you looking at that? Well, what if a parent was a baddie, a perpetrator that was... and I hadn't crossed my mind.
And a teenager was trying to share with other people.
Correct, and I hadn't thought about that.
Like
so I don't know
friends
how you
and-
protect children from that against the majority of parents that just want to make sure that their children are OK.
Such a good point.
And I don't know, technology's very clever.
It's running
Surely
ahead of
we
us.
can work
I know we're
something,
running to catch up every day.
So I don't know. But in my case, Jules is no longer here. So who are we protecting? Because he's no longer here.
Well, you're both doing incredible work. As a society, we owe you both so much. We really do.
Thank
You're making
you
a difference.
very much indeed. And if there was one question, because we're going to speak to Peter Kyle in about an hour, if there's one question that you wanted us to ask on your behalf, I know you've already seen him, but this morning, knowing what you know in the last few days, what would it be?
Would that be about how quickly he will review this and keep on the case and look at the legislation and strengthen it?
It's the when question, isn't it?
Well, also, technology is changing so quickly that they've got to change to keep up with it.
Yeah,
and that's,
exactly.
if you're waiting years for things to happen down the line, it's going to be out of date before it gets there.
When will he come up with an Online Safety Act 2? How about that?
OK, great.
OK, we'll put that to him.
Yeah, thank
Well, it's
you
good
both.
to see you both. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll see you again soon, I'm sure.